this International Society for Krishna Consciousness.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Niku. How's everyone doing? Okay?
Yes.
Good. Now you have a choice today. What do you value more, fresh air or silence? Fresh air? You value that more than silence, huh? Okay, so we keep the window open, and if it gets loud, we can. So we got a bit of time this afternoon to discuss a little bit about the wonderful teachings that Krishna gives in this book right here, Bhagavad-Gita. Put your hands up if you read the entire Bhagavad-Gita. Okay? Put your hands up if you've read a little bit of the Gita, parts of it. Okay, good. And maybe some of you are seeing the Gita for the first time. That's absolutely fine. This is a beautiful book. It's 5,000 years old. The contents are, at least, maybe not this particular copy. But the Bhagavad Gita is an incredible book. It contains, it's a conversation which took place between Krishna and Arjuna 5,000 years ago. But it said that the questions that Arjuna asks Krishna are the questions that each one of us will ask at some point in our life. And so today we're going to see whether the Bhagavad Gita speaks to us and maybe answers some of our questions. All of us come in here today with many questions on our minds. Do you have some questions on your minds? You do. Maybe you have questions, maybe you have some doubts, maybe you have some difficulties, maybe, just maybe in life. And it's said that when we come together in a spiritual gathering and we hear this wisdom, then these are actually divine messages. So if you keep an open heart and an open mind, and hopefully open ears as well, then today you may just hear something that is very relevant to you and which may help you on your journey, hopefully. But before we do that, we'll just sing a little bit. And before we have any spiritual discussion, we sing this song. It's called Jaya Radha Madhav, and it's all about the spiritual world. So this world is not the destination, this world is just a station. This is a station, but the destination is actually a spiritual realm. We're just stopping over here for some time. And so regularly in our tradition, we sing this song to remind ourselves of the spiritual world, which is where we're trying to reach. So the words are quite simple, so you can follow along, and if you don't exactly know all the words, that's fine. You can just meditate in the spiritual world. It's a place where every step is a dance and every word is a song. Keshava
Hare Krishna,
So, today we're reading from the Bhagavad-Gita. And today you will choose the verse, not me. So, there are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad-Gita. So, anyone want to shout out a number between 1 and 18?
6.
6. Who said that? Okay, 6. Okay, good. 6 it is, okay. And anyone want to say out a number between 1 and 47?
6. 21.
6. Okay. I heard 6 first, so let's go with that. So we are reading today from the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, and we're reading about text number 6. Let's see, maybe it's relevant to you. Let's see what Krishna says. So this is chapter number 6, text number 6. Do you want to try and say the Sanskrit after me? Oh, you just want me to speak? Okay. Alright, I'm just going to say it myself. This is the Sanskrit. Krishna speaking to Arjuna. Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmana jita anatmanastu satrutve vartetatmeva satruvat. Okay, I'll tell you the English now. Krishna says to Arjuna, for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy. Put your hands up if you sometimes have problems with your mind. Okay, looks like Krishna is speaking to all of us today. Thank you. 6. Okay, this is the purport. So what Srila Prabhupada, our teacher, has done is that for every single verse of the Bhagavad Gita, he's given a commentary. And the commentary helps us to understand how this relates to our life today. Of course, you may read this verse and say, no commentary needed. I understand. But it's good also to hear his illumination. So this is what he said. The purpose of practicing the eightfold yoga is to control the mind in order to make it a friend in discharging the human mission. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go bit by bit because I'm going to explain some things here. The eightfold yoga practice is an ancient practice of yoga which originated with someone called Patanjali. Have you ever heard of Patanjali?
Yes.
Patanjali wrote a book called the Yoga Sutras. And in the Yoga Sutras, he outlined something called Astanga Yoga. Anga means limbs, and Asta means 8. So it literally means the 8-limbed yoga. Now today, if you go to a place and they say, we're going to teach you yoga. By the way, we're going to start yoga classes here. More about that later. But nowadays, if you go into the world and they tell you they're going to teach you yoga, what kind of yoga do they teach you? Hatha yoga. And what is Hatha yoga? Hatha yoga is basically asanas, which means postures, and pranayam, which means breathing. So these two things, asanas and pranayam, they are 2 steps of Astanga yoga. The first step of Astanga yoga is yama, things you should not do. Then the next step of Astanga yoga is niyama, things you should do. Then the third step of Astanga yoga is asanas, postures. The fourth step of Astanga is pranayam, breathing. The fifth step of Astanga yoga is pratyahara, which means to take your mind and senses away from things that are not good for you. Then the 6th step of Astanga is called dharana, placing your mind in those things which are positive, positive contemplation. And then the 7th stage is known as dhyana, which means focusing now on those things. Dhyan means meditation. And then the 8th step is samadhi, where one enters a state of complete mental and spiritual tranquility. So what most people know about in terms of yoga today is just 2 isolated steps of a bigger process, which is not just meant to help you look good and lose weight, but a process which is ultimately aimed to help you conquer your own mind. Unless the mind is controlled,
After a while, you can take some.
yeah, we'll take some more. You have to practice mind control. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga is simply a waste of time. One who cannot control his mind lives always with the greatest enemy, and thus his life and its mission are spoiled. The constitutional position of a living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. As long as one's mind remains an unconquered enemy, one has to serve the dictations of lust, anger, avarice, illusion. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the direction of the personality of Godhead, who is situated in the heart of everyone as the Paramatma. Real yoga practice entails meeting the Paramatma within the heart and then following his dictation. For one who takes to Krishna consciousness directly, perfect surrender to the dictation of the Lord follows automatically. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Here's a mobile phone. If the battery is old, if the screen is broken, if the cover is damaged, Can you still use the phone?
No.
Really? Many people have broken screens, right? Many people's battery is like low, but they just keep charging it. Many people's covers are broken, but you carry on using the phone. Many people just carry on like that. But if the operating system crashes, can you do anything with the phone? So what is more important part of the phone, the hardware or the software?
Software.
In the world today, most people put emphasis on the hardware of their identity, but they don't put emphasis on the software of their identity. The Bhagavad-Gita explains that each of us are a spiritual being, but in order to function in this world, we're given software and we're given hardware. What's the hardware? The body. The body that you see every day when you wake up in the morning and you look at the mirror, that's the body you've been given. That's your hardware. Like it or not, you have to live with it. The software of our body is our mind, our intelligence, and our subtle capabilities. But if you look at the world today, on every corner there is a gym, isn't it? A gym to train the body. How many of you are members of a gym? Now no one to put their hand up. We know some of you are. Many people join a gym because you've got to take care of your body. Health is good. Physical health is important. But how many people are taking care of their software, their mind? How many mind gyms have you seen? Have you ever seen a mind gym? No. Well, the Hare Krishna temple is a mind gym. And there's no membership fee, you can just come. And we open at 4:30 in the morning. So you're welcome to come. And actually it's really, really important. Because if you have a beautiful body, you have beautiful possessions, you have beautiful arrangements in your life, even if you have beautiful people around you, but you don't have a beautiful mind, then everything is practically useless. Because Krishna says, if you haven't conquered or made friends with your mind will be the constant enemy. We think the enemy is outside of us. The enemy is the governments. The enemy is the taxman. The enemy is, dare I say it, my husband or wife. The enemy is my boss. The enemy is all the bad fortune that I've come across. We think everything else is our enemy. But actually, the enemy is closer than you think. There's one great yogi in the Bhagavatam, and after a lifetime of living, he had an amazing realization. And you know what his realization was? He said, let me see if I can remember it. He said, I was thinking in my whole life about what was the source of my suffering. Because in our life we suffer so much. So he was thinking, what is the source of my suffering? And this was his realization. God, it's just escaped my mind. It was just in my mind and then I lost it. Nayam jano me sukadu kahetur na devatatma graha karma kalaha Manaparam karamana mananti samsara chakram parivartayadyat. Amazing realization. He said, I was reflecting on my life and I was thinking, why did I suffer so much? And then he said, Nayam jano me. I used to think that other people were the cause of my suffering. I was wrong. Na devatatma. Later on I used to think that maybe the gods were the cause of my suffering. They're conspiring against me. I was wrong. Nagraha. Later on I thought maybe the planets were the cause of my suffering. Have you done your astrology? Very bad. There's a moon. And the moon, it's bad influence, bad luck. He said, I used to think it was the planets. I was wrong. Karma. Later on I thought maybe karma was the cause of my suffering. I was wrong. Really? Karma isn't the cause of your suffering? No. Kala. Later on I used to think that maybe time is the cause of my suffering, because in time everyone suffers. I was wrong. He said, in the end I realized, Param Karanam, there's only one cause of suffering. And what is that cause of suffering? Mana, my own mind. Because everything can be great or everything can be terrible, but if your mind is uncontrolled, it will all be suffering. And everything can be great or everything can be terrible, but if you've made friends with your mind, everything is beautiful. So therefore, the software of our existence is our mind. And most people, number one, they don't know what the mind is. Number two, they don't know how to control their mind. And number three, they don't know how to then positively absorb their mind in something else. And therefore, you know that the World Health Organization now says that the biggest problem in health in the next 10 years won't be cancer, it won't be heart problems, it won't be any kind of viruses in the world, but you know what the biggest problem in the world is going to be? Mental health. 1 in 3 people in America have a psychiatrist. In UK, I don't know what it's like in Brussels, but in UK, 1 person commits suicide every 70 minutes. That's the reality. Why? Because mental health, the mind has become the greatest enemy, and therefore one no longer sees any hope, one no longer sees any future. But if we're all honest, then all of us have battles with the mind. We think depression is what happens to people, you know, out there who have some kind of on medication or something. Actually, everyone feels some elements of this practically every single day, because the mind is always constantly troubling us. Therefore, the entire practice of yoga is meant to remold your own mind. When the mind is uncontrolled, then what you'll find is you always have negative thoughts. Yeah. Well, let's say like this. There is a friend and there is an enemy. Tell me some things which are qualities of an enemy. Can you shout out some things? Qualities of an enemy. Yes.
You don't drink alcohol, but they want you to drink alcohol.
Okay, so the enemy is always telling you to do the wrong things.
It's a friend.
Yes. What else?
Anger, that's one thing that...
The enemy is always angry and not looking out for your best well-being. What else? Doubts. An enemy puts doubts in you. He puts doubts in yourself, limits you.
Enemy wants you to take the wrong decisions in life.
Enemy wants you to take the wrong decisions so that you become unsuccessful.
He's jealous.
An enemy is jealous when they can't stand to see you succeed. An
Distractions.
enemy is always distracting you from what will be good for you, from what will be progressive and rewarding. Can you now begin to see what a mind that's uncontrolled is like? You sometimes feel like that's what your mind is like. The mind is always, you don't know what the mind is going to come up with next. In the ancient scriptures, the mind is described like this. Markatasya surapanam tatra vreshtikadam sanam tanmadhye bhuta samcharo yadva tadva bhavishyati. You want to know what the mind is like? Have you ever seen a monkey? Very erratic, isn't it? A monkey, you don't know what they're going to do next. But, Markatasya surapanam. Have you ever seen a drunk monkey? Well, then the restlessness goes to another degree. But, Tatra Vrishtika. Have you ever seen a drunk monkey that has been bitten by a scorpion? that kind of monkey is even more agitated. But not just that. Tanmadhye bhuta samcharo. Have you ever seen a drunk monkey that's been bitten by a scorpion and haunted by a ghost? Yadva tadva bhavishyati. Who is going to be able to predict what such a monkey is going to do next? Welcome to the mind. The ancient scriptures say this is the mind. So sometimes the mind comes up with all these ideas. Have you noticed? Sometimes the mind comes up with the craziest things. And therefore, our mind needs attention. Our mind has become infected. Our mind is basically has a virus. You know, like when you have a virus on the computer, everything slows down, nothing works properly. Our mind has a virus. Do you think it's really possible to change the way your mind functions? Is it hard? It's not hard? You think it's easy? It's not easy and it's not hard. Which one is it? It's hard, isn't it? It's not so easy to change your mental dialogues. Like, for example, when you have to wake up in the morning, the mind always seems very loud. It's very difficult to overcome the mind. But you can do it, Krishna says, by practice and by detachment. You can gradually learn to remold your mind. I'll give you an analogy of how to understand your mind. All of you use the internet, right? So to go on the internet, you need a browser. Right? So which browser do you use? Chrome. Which browser do you use?
Same.
Chrome. Chrome. Oh, everyone's using Chrome. No Firefox, no Edge.
Sometimes
Explorer. Traditionalist. You have a browser, right? Now think of an internet browser. Every single internet browser has a home page, isn't it? So when you double click, it's immediately going to go to a certain page, right? Every single internet browser has a history, isn't it? So you got that tab, and then all the sites that you visited are all there in the history. Every single internet browser has a favorites, isn't it? So when you click the star, whichever sites you want to quickly go to, you can go to. Every internet browser has an auto-fill-in, doesn't it? So when you type www.k, then many sites come up which you visited before. Hopefully Krishna.com is there as well. And in this way, every single internet browser is configured in a certain way. So your mind is like an internet browser. Your mind has a default way of thinking. Your mind has a history, many things that you've seen in the past, experienced, traumas, memories. It's all there in your mind. Your mind also has favorites. Things that it likes, things that it's attracted by, things that it wants for gratification. And your mind also has an autocorrect, so that when you see one thing, your mind immediately thinks of some connected thing. So can you see how your mind is like an internet browser? Now my question to you is, can you configure an internet browser?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Can you change the home page? Yes, you can. Can you delete the history? Yes, you can. Can you change the favorites? Yes, you can. Can you change the cookies and what the memory of the whole thing? Yes, you can. So in the same way, our mind is like a browser. It's not causing us to go in certain places, but it's tempting us, it's guiding us, it's ushering us into a certain realm of functioning like a browser. And therefore, if we learn to remold our mind like we remold a browser, then if you reconfigure your browser, you're much less likely to waste time on this internet site or that internet site. You're much more likely to go to the places which are going to help you get the right information. So in the same way, if you learn to reconfigure your mind, then you'll be able to go on a much more progressive journey in your life. Does that make sense? But even when you've reconfigured an internet browser, as you're surfing the internet in the browser, there's always the chance that something will come. What's that?
Advertisements.
Pop-ups. Even when you've configured your browser, still, there's always a chance that a pop-up could just come from anywhere. So even for the spiritualist who has learned to reconfigure their mind, there's always the chance that something may come to your mind, something out of the... And when a pop-up comes, do you click it? What do you do?
Don't show this.
X. And you just close it. So similarly, when thoughts come to our mind which we know are not helpful, are not in our character, are not going to help, we just close, we ignore them. And then gradually they just disappear. So this is the great art that Krishna talks about in terms of how to control your mind. Because until and unless you've controlled your mind, you won't be able to make good decisions. Unless and until you've controlled your mind, you won't be able to have good relationships. Unless and until you've controlled your mind, you won't be able to achieve the potential of what you're meant to achieve in your life. And until and unless you've controlled your mind, you'll never be able to achieve spiritual connection. And therefore, the biggest agenda for everyone every single day is, what am I doing today to invest in my endeavor to control my mind? If a day goes by and you don't do some activities which help you to control your mind, then know that that day is a wasted day. Because this is the place where if you give time and energy, your life will change in the most dramatic and beautiful way. But in the world today, most people don't know this. They know that their mind is driving them crazy, but they don't know how and what to do in order to change that. But by coming to spiritual teachings, Krishna begins to explain to us what the mind is, how it functions, and how it can be conquered. And so if we're wise, then we'll take advantage of this knowledge. And when we've learned to control our mind, then not only will we be more materially successful on all levels, but spiritually we'll give ourselves the opportunity to really connect deeply. So let me stop there. You pick the verse, and this is what Krishna told us, that we have to learn to control the mind. That's our greatest enemy. And so I just shared some reflections on that. And now if anyone has any questions or comments or practical things that you'd like to ask, perhaps on the mind or mind control, then we can have a little bit of a discussion. So does anyone have any questions they would like to ask on the mind? Yes.
There is the main question, how to control the mind. Any practical steps?
Yeah, so in a beautiful Sanskrit verse in the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna says, Asamsayam mahabaho manodurnigraham chalam abhyasena tu konteya vairagyena chakriyate. Krishna says if you want to control the mind, then you have to do two things. Abhyas, which means practice, and vairagya, which means detachment. So the first thing is that if you want to control your mind, you have to detach yourself from your mind. When thoughts are going through our minds, the first problem is we identify with those thoughts. We think we are those thoughts. But actually no, that's just the mind. So don't identify with the mind, identify the mind. The biggest problem is people identify with the mind. They think they are their thoughts. No, you're not your thoughts. Your thoughts are generated by the mind. You are the soul who is the observer of the mind. And when you learn to observe and detach yourself from the mind, then it means you won't feel the need to act on every single thought. How many times have you done something based on a thought in the mind that later on you've regretted? Does it happen? Many times. Our mind is coming up with many ideas, but we don't need to take it so seriously. Even when the mind seems to be shouting, if you just learn to ignore the mind, later on it just becomes quiet after some time. You know, kids are like that sometimes, isn't it? I've seen parents and sometimes how they, the kids are going, shouting, crying, and the parents are just like, just relax. And then after a few minutes, they're okay, back to normal, very quiet. The mind is like that, like a kid. It's always screaming, shouting, wanting something. Oh, it's not good. Even you're in this room now, I'm sure the mind is screaming, like, why are there so many people here? Why there's no fresh air? There's no space. I wonder what's there. Why is he going on so long? So many thoughts are screaming. Just detach yourself a little bit. First thing Krishna says, Vairagya. Detach yourself from the mind. But then the second thing Krishna says is abhyasa. Then engage the mind in something positive. So therefore, this morning we were sitting with everyone doing mantra meditation. Mantra, what does mantra mean? Mana means the mind, and tra means trayate, which means to free. So mantra is that thing, that type of meditation which helps to free your mind and connect it to something much higher. So abhyas means practice meditation every day and connect your mind, absorb your mind in something much more positive, something much more empowering. Bathe your mind in spiritual vibration, in spiritual thoughts, and then the mind will gradually become remolded. So this is the simple technique to overcome the mind. Number one, ignore it, and number two, redirect it. And if you do this every single day, you'll see that actually your mental thought patterns begin to change. I hope that helps. Yes?
So we said that there is a mind which always prompts, but I'm not my mind. It's like the mind is prompting me. Myself is different from the mind.
Yes.
So the question is like, since we are the practitioner and we are not on the soul platform, so can we say that it's the duty of my intelligence who should guide the mind, but the intelligence is very weak in front of mind. Mind is like a very strong person and intelligence is very weak.
So the Upanishads give an analogy. If you think of a horse, horses drawing a chariot, okay? Then the horses are like the senses. The reins are like the mind. The driver is intelligence, and the passenger is the soul, and the chariot is the body. So for most people in the world, the chariot of the body is just being led by the horses, because their mind and their senses are uncontrolled. But when you're progressive, then what will happen is the soul, the passenger, will tell the driver, I want to go here. The driver, their intelligence, will hold the reins, which is the mind. And the reins will then control the horses, which are the senses. So the direction needs to be coming from that side. But for most people, the direction is coming from this side. Therefore, along with abhyasa and vairagya, in order to control the mind, you've raised another point that's important, is also jnana, which means knowledge, philosophy. Because when we strengthen our intelligence, then even when the mind is screaming to say, do this, do that, the intelligence will be stronger than the mind, and therefore the intelligence won't be overcome by the mind. And therefore another very important aspect in controlling the mind is to spiritualize your intelligence. And how do you spiritualize your intelligence? By reading books of wisdom. by having spiritual discussion. Because then, after a discussion like this, when we go out and you walk past the shop and your mind says, I want it. Because of this discussion, your intelligence will say, but I don't need it. And therefore, it will be able to control the emotions. But if you don't have that intelligence, then it will just be, I want it, therefore I'll get it. And if your whole life is, I want it, therefore I'll get it, then you won't go. They say, don't give up what you want most for what feels good now. But how many people are able to live that? If you can live this mantra, don't give up what you want most for what feels good now. If you can live that mantra, just watch your life change. And if you can't live that mantra, see how in your life you will have so many regrets. You will have so many things that you feel disappointed about. So therefore, this art of how to resist temptation. Now in the world today, one of the biggest things is addiction. Did you know that? People are addicted to alcohol. People are addicted to smoking. People are addicted to work. People are addicted to the internet. People are addicted to illicit material. People are addicted to caffeine. People are addicted to social media. Addiction is now the biggest thing. And because people don't know the art of how to control temptation, because they don't know the art of how to control the mind. And so this is one of the great arts of life. Don't give up what you want most for what feels good now. Yes, I hope that helps. Anyone else have any questions or anything you'd like to comment? Yes.
When you are working on the mind, and when you're aware that these are things which is going on, it's like a replay, it's like a film which goes on. And there are also during the motion picture going on, you also see a lot of regrets which are there. And then it's very difficult. I mean, it's having awareness and then getting to it. So like when there are breaks or you don't meditate, it is like I go through that. Then I go back to my regrets, like oh shit. Because now I feel I'm more wise, but I was not wise before. It's always
And those
like,
regrets keep playing on your
yeah,
mind.
so how do you tackle with that? How do you tackle
We should not be prisoners of the past. We should just be students of the past. In other words, don't live in the past, but learn from the past. One extreme that people do is they forget about their past, and the other extreme is they live in their past. Both of those are bad, because if you forget your past, there's so much you need to learn from your past. So if you live in your past, you're just constantly not being progressive. So don't forget about the past, don't live in the past, but learn from the past and live in the present and plan for the future. That is the great art of life. So we have to learn that yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I did things wrong. Now let me sit down and ask myself, the only good thing that can come from that now is if I learn a lesson and I apply it now. So if I really want to overcome my regrets about the past, the best thing I can do is instead of just thinking and thinking about it, the best thing I can do is learn something from it and use that lesson to change the way I live now. Then that regret becomes easier to digest because at least you can say, you know what, I did something wrong, but at least I improved from it. Regrets become more and more difficult to live with when we know that we haven't learned from them and moved on from them and grown from them. So if you want to know the real way to deal with your regrets, learn from it and use it to become a better person now, and then those regrets won't haunt you anymore. But your regrets, if you see in your life that you haven't changed since those things that you regret, then your mind will constantly go back to those regrets and you will constantly be a prisoner of the past. So therefore, Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma Nasochiti Nakamshiti Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhaktim Labhate Param. Through spirituality, you raise your consciousness to such a level, Nasochiti, where you have no lamentation about the past, Nakamshiti, and you're not constantly fantasizing about a future, but you're completely happy living in the present. The power of now. I have a book, right? So this is the real power of now. So most people don't know these things because most people have not accessed spiritual knowledge, and therefore they're struggling. Most people are struggling with these things. Therefore the Bhagavad-Gita comes. People look at a book like this and they think, yeah, this kind of stuff, I'll do it when I'm old. Because this kind of stuff is good for the afterlife, when you're about to kick the bucket. Then it's good for the afterlife. But what they don't understand, this is the ultimate book in spiritual self-development. If you want to understand how to make good decisions, if you want to understand how to find love, if you want to understand how to be determined, if you want to understand how to mediate relationships, if you want to understand how to achieve your full potential, if you want to understand how to avoid burnout, it's all there in the Bhagavad-Gita. But how many people have made a study of it? Yeah, I'll do it in the future. In the future. Tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it someday. Oh, someday? Which day? Someday. No, tell me. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? No, someday. No, that's not one of the days of the week. Which day? So we always perpetually put things off. We can even, if we're honest, all of us have to ask ourselves, even in this room, how many years have we been coming to the temple? How many weeks, how many months have we been coming? And how much have we actually studied the Bhagavad-Gita? Have we deeply studied the Bhagavad-Gita? Have we taken advantage to really understand how Arjun's questions are the questions that every single one of us will ask in our life? Have we really? Or have we just taken it for granted? I'm coming, I'm chanting, I'm in the club. I'm in the club. I come on a Sunday and I am part of the Hare Krishnas. No. We're happy you are. But more than that, the whole purpose, imagine if you go to school and you don't learn any lessons. No, but I went to school for 20 years. But did you sit in the classroom and deeply study? No, I don't know, but I went to school. Oh, what's the point? So what's the point of coming? If we don't understand these things, if we don't change, if we don't apply, this is the great opportunity that we're being given. Yes. Sorry, I'm here, I'm a kind of like a bit of a challenging person, so don't take it that I'm having a go at you. It's all in a friendly spirit. Yes.
I have a question in the same vein. Like, what's the best way of reading Bhagavad-Gita? Because when there are so many translations happening around us with the help of technology, we get so many things to read about it.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, when we read like a book, a Bhagavad-Gita as it is, sometimes the concept doesn't goes into the mind as it should be. Like, we cannot imbibe it in the situations.
Okay, so your question is, how should we read the Bhagavad-Gita? And my answer to you is, in chapter 1, in the very first verse, in the very first line, it gives you the answer. You know what Srila Prabhupada says? Bhagavad-Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya. There it says that one should read the Bhagavad-Gita very scrutinizingly, with the help of a person who's a devotee of Krishna, and try to understand it without motivation. Those are the three things. First thing is, if you want to understand Bhagavad-Gita, you have to do it scrutinizingly. You have to be patient. You have to read it every single day. This knowledge, you can't just get it like this in 6 months or something. This knowledge is like a spiral. You understand? Spiral. You keep reading it again and again and again and again and again, and then you actually get to the essence. So Gita is a book you have to read very scrutinizingly, very patiently, very regularly. Don't let a day go by where you don't interface with the knowledge of the Gita. First thing. Second thing is, you can't understand it yourself. You have to understand it with the help of those who are living the Gita. Therefore, you have to go to classes. You can take a course. You can come to gatherings like this and say, I've been reading. These are my questions. Can you help me? Then you'll understand more. I started reading the Gita when I was 15, and I read for 2 years. And when I was 17, I went to a class. And you know what? I learned more in one class than I did in 2 years of reading by myself. And then I realized, you know what? Maybe I need to learn this from someone who knows. Right? So if you want to know, you have to learn from a devotee who's not just knows, but is living it. Second thing. And the third thing is, try to study it without any motivation. Try to understand it. Don't like say for example, someone goes to the Gita and they want to justify something, or they want to find some answer they're looking for, or they want the Gita to say something that confirms they're already what they're thinking. Generally, like when people come in a class and you ask them, what did you remember? They remember generally the point that they want to remember because it confirms something within them. They don't like to remember the points which challenge them. They don't like to remember the points which force them to change. They don't like to remember the parts of the discourse where it's like, oh my God, I'm doing it wrong. No, so you go as a blank slate. Okay, Krishna, what do you want to tell me? I'm open. And if you do that, you learn the Gita. So it's very simple, it's very practical, it's very achievable. But each one of us need to put the time and the effort. It's amazing, I was saying yesterday, each of us spent 20 years studying in a modern educational system from Monday to Friday, 6 hours a day, so that we could get a job. All of us did it. 20 years. Now imagine you just took 10% of that time for your spiritual education for eternity. How many people have done that? How many people have taken 2 years out just to study spiritual knowledge? No one's done that. We're not willing to take even 10% of that time out for the eternal benefit, yet we're willing to spend all that time so that we can get a job and get some money now. Because we have not registered why this is so important. Therefore, you may not be able to do it now. Now you're in your life, you have your responsibilities. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to India 2 years, see you later, study the Gita and I'll be back. You can't do it now. But maybe you can at least start reading. Right? There is an app here that I want to show all of you. It's not that I made this app and it's free, so I'm not getting any money from it. It's called Be a Sage Page by Page. Have you ever seen this app? Okay, so what you can do in this app is you can go to any of Srila Prabhupada's books. So let's say Bhagavad-Gita. And let's say today, Prabhu, you're going to make a resolution that you're going to read the Bhagavad-Gita. How long do you want to read the Bhagavad-Gita? Within how much time?
30 minutes.
30 minutes you're going to read the whole Gita?
No.
No, I mean the whole Gita.
Okay,
Forget
whole
that.
Gita.
Tell me in what time frame you want to finish the Gita.
Okay.
1 year?
Yeah, 1 year.
Okay. So then you can put Bhagavad Gita, year. You know how many You know how many shlokas you need to read every single day?
2, 3, 4.
2.
Yeah, 2.
Simple. Boom, you done it. 2 shlokas every day, you read the whole Gita in a year. If you read 4 shlokas, you'll read it twice.
Yes.
And if you read 6 shlokas, you'll read it 3 times. 3 is a good number. Can you do it? Why not? What does 2 shlokas take? So, there's nothing.
And probably the chanting that we do, that is exclusive of spending time reading Gita.
Yeah, that's on top. That's a bonus. No, both are important. Chanting and reading together. You have to do both. See, we chant 1 round every day, read 2 shlokas of the Bhagavad-Gita. At the minimum. Actually, we can do more. But at the minimum, let's start there and then see where we can go. Otherwise, we're coming to the temple, but there's no lesson, no change. See? Sorry, I saw a hand there at the back. Yes, please.
Yes, it was.
I think it's behind you too.
Krishna said in the book, we must think about Krishna every day and continually. My question is, how are you thinking about Krishna? Maybe I do something automatically. I'm not thinking about Krishna, but after I say, I did this for Krishna.
For Krishna, yeah.
Or if I do something this day or next day, before night or morning, I say I did this for the Krishna. How is better?
Is that okay? Alright, I understand, yeah. So your question is that Krishna says, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Krishna says, always think of me. But sometimes we may not be thinking of Krishna while we do an activity, but we dedicate it to Krishna. So is that still just as good? Yesterday I was saying there is good, better, and the best. So the best is if you're constantly thinking of Krishna and you do the activity and then you dedicate it to Krishna, that's the best. But if you can't do that, then at least what you can do is dedicate your activity to Krishna. That's still good. So say for example you're working in the world, say for example you're working as an investment banker. And while you're at your work, you can't always think of Krishna. But then what you do is, with your pay that you get, you dedicate it to Krishna, or with your skills, you dedicate that to Krishna. Then your work becomes service to Krishna, because you're dedicating the fruits. So that's good. But actually what will happen in a mature stage is, it will be very difficult to stop thinking of Krishna, even when you're at work. Have you ever experienced of how a boy and girl are in love? When a boy and girl are in love, you know, like when they have teenage love, then the boy or the girl may be on the other side of the planet, but they're constantly thinking, isn't it? In all of their duties, that person is always on their mind. So that when we develop a very intimate connection with Krishna, then not only will our mind always be on Krishna, but we will see Krishna everywhere. Even when you're at work, you'll see Krishna. Even when you're doing your gardening, you will see Krishna. Krishna says, Rasoham apshukonteya prabhashmi shashishuriyo pranava sarva vedeshu shabdake paurusham vishu. Krishna says, I'm the light of the sun. I'm the ability in man. I'm the sound in ether. I'm the taste of water. When one becomes sufficiently advanced, everything will remind you of Krishna. Once the gopis, they got all together, and so they were all asking each other, what did you dream about Krishna yesterday? So one gopi said, I dreamed this, I dreamt that. And Radharani, she was quiet. So then they all looked at her and they said, we all said, what did you dream about Krishna? You now say. So she was shy. She said, no, you say, what did you dream about Krishna? And she said, dream about Krishna? dream about Krishna. All night I was thinking about Krishna. I couldn't get to sleep. Where was the question of dreaming about Krishna? So when one is more